Welcome to the very final edition of Ask Me Almost Anything, my live call here in my SIVA Circle community and also in my communities on Facebook as well as on LinkedIn and my YouTube community. So thank you so much if you are joining in on the call here on Zoom, or thank you to those who have sent in their questions. I'm Angel Shannon, founder and executive director of SIVA Health and the SIVA Institute, where we put mindfulness and compassion in action to help you live longer and live better, to help you change your life, not just your symptoms. I really do believe, and all of us at SIVA Health and the SIVA Institute really do believe that good health is the first wealth. And because of that, we are here to help you put the tips, tools, and strategies together to live longer and live better, to change your life, not just your symptoms. This call is all about you. It's about providing you the answers that you're looking for to help you make the science simple. It's all about helping you make the science simple, because I truly believe, as a healthcare provider, coming up on my 30th year in clinical practice, next year will be 30 years of doing the work that I do. I truly believe that what we need more of is opportunities to have normal conversations about the science of healthcare, the science of our body, why our bodies are doing the things that they're doing, and how they do the things that they're doing, right? To make the science simple. I also believe that we as healthcare providers have to be more accessible outside of the clinical environment. You know why? Because you don't get the opportunity within a 15-minute appointment to ask the how and the why and what ifs, right? You're there, you have to rush in, get your blood pressure checked, get your times are we going to check people's weights, right? Before we start answering questions. So my mission as a clinical provider is to hold space for those of you who really want the science made simple. You want to ask questions, you want to get some of the answers to those questions, and you want to implement these small but sustainable choices and decisions and changes in your everyday life. The smallest tweaks can yield the biggest changes. And that's what lifestyle medicine is all about. It's not about being perfect. It's not about magic. It's not about tricks. It's not about, like, the fast track, lose the weight in 30 days. No, 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 we're not doing that. We are making sustainable lifestyle changes because we want to put mindfulness and compassion in action, right? So that's what this is all about. So I have a visitor on the call. Thank you so much, Melissa Pierre-Louis. I see you here on the call. And for those of others who may join in later, or who want to watch the replay because they've already registered, just know that that will be coming to you in your inbox. If you're on my mailing list, you will automatically get this because it will be in your next Wednesday Wellness email coming out. If you're not on my mailing list, please do join the mailing list, because that's how you'll get these replays if you're busy during lunch, if you can't make it on the live call, if you have a question, if you want the form to use to submit your question, like 5 other people already did today, that's where you're going to get this information. So if you're watching this replay in any iteration, whether it be on YouTube, on Facebook, or if you're a patron, do know that the best way to get access to everything that I'm doing, including these forms and the dates for the live call, is just to simply be on the mailing list. This way you'll stay in the know. All right, so I've got 5 good questions, but for the person who's on my call now, or the people that are on my call now, I see another person has joined in. If you've got a question you'd like to submit, go ahead and drop that in the chat. I'm going to consider that, weaving those answers in as we move along. I'm going to launch into the first question that I do have. And if you've got a question, feel free to go ahead and drop that in the chat for me. And I promise I will get to that on today's Ask Me Almost anything, almost anything live call. Let me say this one thing too. Last bit of information that's really super important. Everything that we discuss on these Ask Me Almost Anything live calls are for educational purposes only. They are not medical, legal, or financial advice that do not constitute a relationship between you and me as a healthcare provider. So these informational sessions are purely informational for you to consider in your life, to discuss with your own healthcare provider, and to think about the ways in which you can start changing your life, not just your symptoms, to live longer and live better with lifestyle medicine. So I had to add that in there, absolutely, right off the bat. So the very first question comes from Sandra in El Paso, Texas. Sandra, thank you so much for sending this question, because this is something that I get often from ladies in your age demographic. Now, you identified and gave me permission to say that you are 47, and you want to know, is there any truth to some of these mail order tests for checking hormones? I really want to dive into that question because there are a lot of people, as I said, especially women, men also, because men do have hormonal changes. We all have hormonal changes as we age, but particularly my ladies who are concerned about perimenopause and menopause. So I chose this question first. Is there any truth or benefit, as you said, to these mail order tests? So first and foremost, absolutely there is, but it depends on the quality of the test that you order. Now, we're living in days now where you can order all of these tests offline. You can get these things on Amazon. You can Google hormone test and send in a specimen and all this kind of thing. Lots of different companies that do this. My recommendation is always for people to consider the source first. So you want to look at whatever company you're choosing to use. You want to look at the quality of their tests, the quality control testing, where the tests are manufactured. You want to know who's on the medical advisory board for these companies. Is there a medical advisor team? Because one of the worst things you can ever do as it pertains to your health is have information that you can't use. Information is only useful to the extent that you can use it, apply it, learn it, grow from it, make a sound decision from it. So lots of times people are ordering these tests, they're spending lots of money on it, and they get data and numbers that they can't even use. Data is only useful to the extent, data is only beneficial to the extent that you can use it and apply it. So what is the benefit of having all these reports and these numbers if you don't know what they mean, if you don't have a way to apply it in your life? So that would be the number one thing I would sort of, guide someone to think about, is the company itself, their quality controls, where the test is made, where it's manufactured. Do they have a medical advisory team? Who are those medical advisors? What is their training? What is their background? Because I'll be honest with you, a lot of people are looking to make some extra money these days. They sign up to be medical advisors or clinical advisors, and they're getting paid pretty well. But the question is, what is their actual experience in this field of hormonal testing or bioidentical hormone replacement or gut health or what have you? Are they actually clinically practicing, or have they practiced, and where? Okay, because that also is important. Study and theory is one thing. Clinical practice is something totally different. And that's why we call it practice, because each time we work with a patient or a client, we're able to apply this knowledge and wisdom in different ways that grows our understanding of the science. So I always, me personally and professionally, I always lean into whatever I'm doing, whether it be accounting, whether it be healthcare, whatever, I'm always leaning into those who are actually practicing what they are teaching or wanting to advise others on. Okay. So in the absence of clinical practice, whether it be right now or in a past time, I have to question a person's knowledge, because as I said, theory is one thing, but clinical practice is actually another. Guidelines change every year. So I'd want to know what clinical guidelines they are following in their testing procedures to be sure that they are applying new science, new regulations, that new knowledge is being applied, okay? Because if someone studied something, graduated from somewhere 30 years ago or 20 years ago, I'd want to be sure that they're refreshing their knowledge and that they're applying the science to new research, and then that's another thing. You want to look at the websites and these testing companies and whatnot to see the degree to which they are involved in clinical research, or their methodologies are attached to the latest clinical research. So what kind of science do they lean into? What studies are they participating in or have participated in? All of that kind of thing. All of this is information that's readily available or should be readily available on any site where you are purchasing a test from or considering getting a test from. Those are that's the broad overview look at it in terms of whether there's validity. Look at the company, look at the product, look at the people who stand behind it. And, I always say, look under the hood a little bit. If you have a car, you look under the hood before you buy it. Look under the hood and see what is under the hood, because there are a lot of flashy, pretty things on the internet now. Beautiful pictures, lots of good wording. People hire the best copywriters these days, but you want to do your due diligence to look under the hood and see what is actually there. Now, I will say that in my practice, there are several clinical, tests that I have used over the years. The one that I have leaned in mostly for over the past year, for which I am a preferred provider for, is Senesco Neurolab testing. I really, really love the product, the test. I love the medical advisory team, the science behind Neurolab. It's all about HPA axis hormone testing, as well as mental health neurotransmitter testing. I even pulled out an actual report, which I cannot show you because this belongs to a specific coaching client, and for security reasons, I cannot do that. But I just pulled out a report just to remind myself of a situation in which we did some testing and we found that there were high levels of testosterone where there shouldn't be. There was, progesterone imbalance. But one of the most important things that this client gained from getting this testing was the understanding of the cortisol curve, looking at the way that the cortisol level was really, really low in the morning and then just flat all day. And so by that, we were able to figure out why this person had so much fatigue and was so tired, had no energy whatsoever. And we were able to correct low mood, low libido, you name it, it was there. And so I always look at this particular test because it just always reminds me, now that I have worked with the person and I see the way they are enjoying their life now, and where they started, it always just blows my mind when I look at what those numbers were beforehand and what they now look like after retesting. And I'm going to say, in full disclosure, because I have the permission to talk about myself if I want to, I actually use their products myself. There's one that I really love. It's called, I'm going to hold it up in front of my camera. It's called Lentra. I absolutely love this. Helps me get a good night's sleep, helps me get good rest. I actually started taking this when I started having hormonal changes, because I was having a lot of hot flashes, a lot of difficulty sleeping. And I just, oh my gosh, the energy crashes in the afternoon were absolutely crazy. So that is one of their products that I absolutely love. And I am a person, I'm an herbalist, and working on my certification as a certified clinical herbalist, because that's a different distinction from my general herbalist training. But I'm a person who really leans into the adaptogens for women. I can't give you any advice, Sandra, about what to take, but I can talk about myself. Several that I absolutely love. Schisandra, and I really do love valerian. That also helps with sleep. I wrote about this on my blog a number of years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. It's called Stress Allies. 6 of my favorite adaptogens. You can go back to that and read that blog. And because you submitted your question, I'm going to actually send you the link to that. If you don't have my hormone handbook, my 9 daily habits for hormone balance, I would highly recommend you get that. If you don't have it, when you opted in for my mailing list, no worries. I'm happy to send that to you because that is also full of some good wisdom as it pertains to hormone balancing as well as hormone testing. So that being said, Sandra, thank you so much for your question. And you can always, at the end of this session, I'm going to provide information for where you can continue to stay in touch with me if you continue to have other questions based on what I've shared. Okay, so the next question, let me see if I've got anything in the chat, and I don't think I do. So I'm going to move on to Marlon. Marlon, thank you so much, Marlon from Newark, New Jersey, who sent me in the next question. Marlon, you asked about diabetes, pre-diabetes, and your question is specifically, for pre-diabetes, is it true that you only need to check the following labs? And then you wrote out what the labs were, and you said fasting glucose as well as a thyroid. What else would there be if I wanted to be sure about this? Okay, so again, I can't give you any specific advice for your concern. What I will say is that pre-diabetes and diabetes are 2 different stages. So pre-diabetes is the opportunity, it's that window of time that you have to really gain the most benefit from lifestyle changes. You absolutely can. Oh, and another part of your question was about reversing diabetes. Let me make sure I speak to that. You can absolutely change your direction when a person, let me say you, but when a person is in the pre-diabetic stage, this is prime time. Let me say that again, prime time for making lifestyle changes that a person could absolutely reverse the condition, because that's why we call it pre-diabetes. Okay, so during that stage, this is when changing, mitigating and managing that stress in your life, top of my list. Many people who are diabetes educators will start talking about food and weight loss and all this kind of thing. As a diabetes educator myself, I spent a number of years in a leadership role with the American Association of Diabetes Educators. I'm trained as a diabetes educator. It was the start of my career as a nurse practitioner, was diabetes education. I don't lean into the diet and all of that and the weight loss as much as I lean into stress, because stress is going to change what is happening in your body at the cellular level. If you are not sleeping and resting, especially at a certain age, there are things within your body that are happening at the cellular level that are changing the way your body functions. This is why in the SIVA circle, we call it get fit and functional for life. Fit and functional. You want to change the way your body is functioning at the cellular level, because the food isn't going to matter. The exercise isn't going to matter. None of these things are going to matter if you've got uncontrolled stress that is changing the way your body methylates, oxidizes, detoxifies, all of those things. You'll just be exercising for nothing if you've got all of this stress and you're not sleeping well, because sleep is the time that your body is actually doing a lot of cleanup, getting rid of dead cells, generating new healthy cells, washing out the debris in your brain, helping you clear out that brain fog. That's the time of your life, your day, when so much is happening. So I say to people, my diabetics anyhow, I always said, ask these questions. Do you have a meditation practice? Do you have, a practice that getting to bed at a decent hour, waking up at a decent hour, controlling your stress? Do you have a therapist? All of those things really matter. Your question was specifically about the tests. So fasting glucose is a clinical standard for checking to rule in or rule out pre-diabetes, right? Fasting glucose is going to tell you what is going on in your body, how your sugars are controlled within the last 7 days or so. Let's just say, give or take 7 to 10 days, or maybe even shorter than that. It's going to tell you what's actually happening with your fasting sugars. It's an important marker, of course. Fasting sugar, regular blood work, something that your doctor can order for you. The test that I like to look at, though, is I like to look at urine. Okay, so I like to look for microalbumin, which is a substance that should not be showing up in your urine. Okay, I also like to look at a hemoglobin A1C. Hemoglobin A1C. That is an important marker because it tells you what you've been doing over the course of the last 3 months. Anything can happen over the last day or two. Maybe you ate something sugary, threw your blood sugar out of control. Maybe you were stressed out, what have you. Fasting glucose can be off. But 3 months is telling a different story. 3 months is telling me what you pretty much do every day, right? Because what you do every day is more important than what you do once in a while, right? So people will say, oh, well, I exercise. How much do you exercise? Once a week? How much do you exercise? Once a month? What you do every day is more important than what you do once in a while, okay? And what you're doing every day is going to show up on a hemoglobin A1C, okay? And it looks at what you've been doing over the course of 3 months, 90 days. I always get a hemoglobin A1C because it's an important marker. If you look up the guidelines, American Association of Diabetes Educators, or if you look up clinical endocrinology, clinical guidelines, you will see that the hemoglobin A1C is a gold standard measurement tool. Okay, so that is something that I personally in my clinical practice am looking for. I'm also looking at microalbumin. I'm looking at the urine because when there is diabetes, there is more often than not true diabetes. Now, I'm not talking about pre-diabetes, but it is something you want to also check. But when there's diabetes, there is insult and injury to the kidneys. There's insult and injury to something in the kidneys called glomerular filtration. That means, and I don't want to get too sciencey here, but it's just how your kidneys are filtering. Whether there's a break in the filter, whether there are things spilling into your urine that should not be spilling into there. When you check that urine, you're able to see if there are proteins, blood, all kinds of things spilling into urine. So I always like to advise people to consider having urine as part of their makeup. Now, because I specialize in lifestyle medicine and I use the tools of functional medicine, I often do functional medicine tests for my coaching clients as well as for my clinical patients, because those tests allow me to look at oxidative stress markers. And that's something that I was talking about a minute ago with just unmitigated stress. There are biomarkers that will show us where your stress is actually happening, if there's inflammation happening, where that it's probably showing up, okay? Those tests are functional medicine tests. They are highly specialized, usually offered by clinicians and coaches like myself or others who specialize in functional medicine. I would caution people to work with these tests with people who are adequately trained and educated in functional medicine. Because again, it's another one of these things that people, jump on and, oh, it's so, whatever. And without adequate training and clinical practice, it's easy to look at data and just say, oh, this person has this, they need such and such supplement. That's not how it works. So I would highly recommend for anyone considering, if you're thinking about, considering that, again, always check the source, always check people's training, always be guided by, the person's clinical background. That's not a swipe at anyone who isn't a clinician. But I do think there's something to be said about clinical practice and working in the field and seeing how this research and new knowledge gets applied. So, Marlon, I hope that answers your question. You also your question by way of form. If you are on my mailing list, Again, you will get this replay, so no need to worry about scribbling down notes and things like this. You'll have the access to the replay. I would highly recommend getting on the mailing list because, again, these things will be coming out more readily. You'll get the dates for when I'm holding these sessions. If you are on the live call, I'll be able to drop things into the chat for you. If you respond two-way response, then I can drop links for you, because I do look at these questions. I've got my little folder here. I do look at these and try to prepare as best I can for those that are submitted. So that usually is the best way, so that I can give you as well-rounded a question that I can. Okay. Okay, thank you so much. I will see you soon. For my participant, thank you so much for being on the call with me today. And if you yourself have a question after you've logged off, something comes up, please do just send it to me through the form. Thank you. Okay, I have another question coming in from Seattle, Washington. Tony, thank you so much for your question. Tony, you have asked about Berberine. You submitted this on behalf of your sister, I think you said, about Berberine and how it works. You have been seeing a lot of information online about Berberine and weight loss, and you want to know, is there any validity to it? So, Berberine. Berberine is an herb, for those who don't know. And basically, it's a bioactive compound that's extracted from several different plants. I've got my notes, so you'll see me looking down here, from several different plants. Berberine actually has a long history in traditional Chinese medicine, and it is absolutely being used and tested in a lot of clinical studies. So what I want to offer to you is, rather than, any advice about whether you should or shouldn't use it and anything like that, because again, this isn't about providing medical advice or clinical advice. What I want to suggest is that, or just to offer, is some understanding of how Berberine works, what its actions are. And from there, you can pretty much derive how it could or could not be useful for weight loss. So one of the main actions of berberine is it activates an enzyme inside the cells that's called AMPK, and that stands for activated protein kinase, okay? A lot of people in functional medicine consider AMPK to be like the master metabolic switch, okay, that the metabolic control switch. And AMPK is found in a number of different organs. And basically it but it does regulate metabolism. Okay, so it affects metabolism at the cellular level. And as I said, one of the main bottom line functions of berberine is that it activates that AMPK. Now, here's another couple of takeaways I want you to have about this AMPK. And berberine in clinical studies, okay, from what I have seen, it can increase the body's process of glycolysis, which basically is a fancy term for breaking down sugars, okay? So it helps to break down the sugars inside the cells. It decreases sugar production in the liver. It can slow down the absorption of carbohydrates in the gut. That's really, really important if we're talking about, diabetes, weight loss, all those kinds of things. Here's another really important thing about berberine that was found in clinical studies, and that is that it can increase the diversity of beneficial bacteria in the gut. That is absolutely huge when it comes to general health, but also as it pertains to weight loss, okay? So that is also very important. And the last thing is that it decreases insulin resistance, okay? So if you know anything about weight loss or, accelerating weight loss, you know that these actions these actions are really significant as it pertains to weight loss because you want to be able to decrease insulin resistance. You want to decrease sugar production in the liver. You want to improve the diversity of beneficial bacteria that lie in the gut. So that's also very, very crucial, very, very important. Okay. So berberine, as I said, is it's extracted from a number of different plants. It is an herbal. We have been seeing it a lot of usefulness. I know for me in my clinical and coaching practice, I have seen benefit with it. But again, it's one of those things that, like any supplement, it all depends on where you get it from. Quality controls. You want to make sure it comes from a very good company where there's quality testing, manufacturing processes are safe. And I always say gentle to the earth as an herbalist, that are, earth friendly growing conditions, worker friendly growing, conditions. I just don't choose to purchase products from companies that are not abiding by sustainable and ecologically sound growing and harvesting practices. That's just my personal feeling about that. But again, with any supplement, you want to be making sure that you are under the guidance of your own health coach or healthcare provider to be sure that if you're taking something, that it doesn't interact with something else, because that is a very important thing to remember, is that everything, whether it be a supplement, whether it be a medication, everything has a side effect. It has a potential to interact with something else. And one of the things I do in my clinical practice and coaching work is I'm always doing a brown bag checkup. Always making sure of what are the things people are taking over the counter, because a lot of times people don't realize that even though it's over the counter and it's not prescription, it still matters. It still matters to your health. Anything that you're putting in your body matters to your health and your well-being and your safety. So I always recommend, talking with a healthcare provider or a health coach or both. That's when you get the best bang for your buck, to make sure that you're taking things that are clinically safe and sound for you and that may not have interactions or potential side effects with other things that you are taking. So the jury is in on berberine. It has many, many benefits, not the least of which are those that directly impact your metabolism. So that was a fantastic question, and I really, really appreciate you sending that question in. Okay, now I have a question from Melissa that came in, and I'm going to make sure that I have my resource for that, because this had to do with meal prep. Very, very interesting question about meal prep. So Melissa from San Diego, got quite a few West Coast folks. Melissa from San Diego, thank you so much for sending this question in. Your question is, how do you get started with meal prep? I feel like I am always frustrated because there are so many different tools and recommendations. Do you meal prep for 1 day, 1 week, 1 month? What is the best method that you advise for your coaching clients? Thank you so much, Melissa. I always say that you want to do what you are going to do. Okay, you want to do what you are going to do. What do I mean by that? I mean that, is it realistic for you to meal prep every day? What is your schedule like? What is your life like? Some people can meal prep the night before every day and get out of the house on time and whatnot. Other people just don't have that kind of time. If they work nights, if they work 12-hour shifts, if they travel a lot, they need to meal prep maybe a week ahead of time or even a month ahead of time. Now, I will say this about meal prep. You want to do your meal prep in stages according to the things that you need for your meal plan. So let me give you, and according to the nutritional quality that you're aiming for in your foods. So let me say it this way. There are some things that you can freeze and still gain nutritional value from. Okay, so you can freeze it. It can be in the freezer for a week or a month or what have you. And when you unfreeze it, you'll still have, top quality nutrient value, right? But there are some things that really do need to be made fresh. Now, I'm a fresh girl. I love things that are made fresh, especially things like smoothies and meal replacement shakes, things like that. You want to have those things made as as close to the time that you are going to be eating them or ingesting them, because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck nutritionally. Okay, so it's going to be nutritionally robust. Let me put it that way. I would not prep a smoothie and leave it more than, maybe 5 hours or so before I go to drink it, because they're going to degrade. I've done that when I was, in the beginning, when I was starting, really early at juicing, and I do my juices ahead of time. I learned over time that, you don't want to juice and have that juice be sitting in the refrigerator for a week. You're losing the nutritional value in it, right? And same goes for some other things. So like if you're doing, soups or things like this, the ingredients themselves can be prepped. So they can be chopped, they can be put in your containers, they can be put in your storage bags, things like that. You want to look at those types of things, and you want to look at each particular vegetable or fruit or whatever it is that you are meal prepping ahead of time, and just look up in your research, how long can these things be stored freezer wise. Okay, chicken breasts. I do a lot of bowls, new hot protein bowls for myself, for my own lunch. So, chicken breasts are something that can be frozen. They can be diced up ahead of time, seasoned with whatever, herbal seasonings you're going to use, dice them up, freeze them in your freezer bags or freezer containers. And that can be prepped way ahead of time. So that's not something you need to do every week. So I generally, with my coaching clients, I generally get them, if they're going to do, high protein bowls or chicken bowls or things like this, I generally get them to do their chicken strips at least 2 weeks out, get those things prepared, get them in segmented, containers. There are specific containers that I advise so that things that don't get freezer burned. If you don't use containers, then I usually will recommend a sealant system, like so one of those freezer bag type of systems, because you don't want your meats to get freezer burned. So I generally get my coaching clients, who tend to be very busy professional women, and men, but more so women, I get them to do that at least 2 weeks out. Because once it's done, right? If you can do it even longer than that out, that's even better. But the key thing is you want to make sure that anything that you are freezing is going to maintain its nutritional value. I do a lot of frozen fruits for myself personally, but I use them within a certain time frame. So I will freeze my own fruit, get it fresh, and then do freezer. And I try to use those a week out, not go too much further out than that. Dried fruit is something that you can, if you're prepping, you can do that a month ahead out if you have the time, or a week out. So you see where I'm going with this. It's all dependent upon what your meal plan is, and maintaining the nutritional value of what you have. That's the most important thing. I invested in a food dehydrator because I really like to snack like many people do. And so I dehydrate fruit, and I do that at least 2 weeks out. And I put those again in sealant bags, in containers, so that I have that for my snacks. And my dehydrator is 5 levels. So I'm able to dehydrate an awful lot of fruit and nuts, and and veggies, I should say, because nuts are already dried. But I can get a lot in my dehydrator, so that I have enough to get me through a couple of weeks at a time. So that's what I would say to you, Melissa, is to think about what your meal plan is, what your lifestyle is, and then you want to just think about it in the reverse, like, go back and just think about what your meal plan is, but also um, what your meal plan is, but also the nutrient value of each thing and how to best preserve that. So there are a lot of good books on that. There's a lot of good information on the internet. If you're interested in food dehydration methods, you can definitely message me about that. I did a lot of research on the best food dehydrators. I purchased one that I absolutely love. It's a 5 stackable. In the summer, I tend to grow my own herbs. So I grow basil. I grew a lot of different basil. This summer, I grew a lot of different basils, Thai basil, holy basil. I grew Genovese basil. I grew a beautiful purple basil. So I will dry out my basil in there. I grew echinacea for tea, so I dry that out in there. So food dehydrator is just a wonderful, wonderful tool for people who really do want to drill down into their meal prep behaviors or meal prep habits, and using meal prep as a tool for better health. So that is the answer to that. That is the answer to that. So I have one final question, and that comes in from Sarah. Very good question. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sending this in. Sarah is in Tennessee. I don't know where in Tennessee, Sarah, but thank you so much for submitting your question. You asked about fasting. Wow. So, Sarah, your timing is perfect because I have a new podcast episode coming out next week about fasting over 40. You wanted to know which type of okay, so wait a second, I'm sorry. Which type of fasting is better? Alternate day fasting, intermittent fasting, or the 5-day, 2-day method? Or do you advise multiple days of fasting in a row? So I'm going to say this, Sarah. I want you to tune into my podcast episode dropping next week, which is the first week in January 2023. That is such a great question because there are different ways to conduct a fast. Some fasts work differently. They all work differently. So they're different methods. Ultimately, it just boils down to fasting and the principles of fasting and what goals you are trying to attain, what your health needs are. But I'm taking a deep dive into fasting over 40. So I think that a lot of your questions are going to be answered in that podcast. Want you to be on the lookout for that episode because I get into, first of all, the history of fasting, how, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Let me get a drink of water here. How fasting, excuse me, thank you so much. How fasting works at the cellular level, what health conditions it can be helpful for, why it's important as we age, because healthy aging is a major focus of my work. So I talked about how it's helpful, what to look out for, what to expect if you consider fasting, and also how to overcome some of the roadblocks to fasting. So I want you, Sarah, to know that I am going to answer your question. I already answered it in this podcast. Be on the lookout. You did tell me that you are on my mailing list. So when you see it drop on your newsletter next week, the link to that podcast will be there waiting for you. Okay. And as I said to all of my other members of this community, the lifestyle community that we're building, to every other person who submitted a question, as I said, this is all just really good science made simple. If you have a further question after these answers that I've provided, you are in my community here. You are in the SIVA Circle Fit and Functional for Life community. Well, maybe you're not in the SIVA Circle, but you are welcome to join the SIVA Circle because this is the work that we do in the SIVA Circle, in the Fit and Functional for Life community, in the Fit and Functional for Life coaching program. This is how we make the science simple, whether I'm working one-on-one with you or if we're in a group coaching type of environment. This is my style of coaching, which is really just helping you make the science safe and simple. So take this back to your own healthcare provider and apply this wisdom and this knowledge in new ways that helps you change your life, not just your symptoms, that helps you live longer and live better, to make small, sustainable lifestyle choices. Because as I said, what you do every day is more important than what you do once in a while. So I'm going to wrap up this session just by saying thank you to each of you who sent in your questions. Sandra, Melissa, Marlon, Tony, and Sarah, thank you so much for sending in your questions. I really appreciate it. If you're watching this video and you did not send me a question, this is my invitation to use the form in the description of this video to send me a question. It's a Google form. You don't need an appointment. You don't need an appointment. What is better than that? Send me your question, because in the next Ask Me Almost Anything live call, I'm going to, which is the last Thursday in January, I'm going to be taking these questions. And if you send it to me ahead of time, I will have the opportunity to make sure I bring to you the very best answer that I can provide for you, to answer your question, to give you wisdom, to make the science simple for you. Okay, so use that link in the description. This is on YouTube, I'm sure. So in the description, use the form, the Google form. It is safe. You don't put any of your private information on there. You can just submit your question. Give me yes or no if you want to be on my mailing list. I'm not offended if you don't want to be, but I don't know why you wouldn't want to be, because you can get this in your inbox every single week. Every single week, this kind of knowledge in your inbox every single week. Priceless, guys, because good health is truly the very first wealth. If we didn't learn anything in the past 3 years, now starting the 4th year of a global pandemic with COVID-19, if we didn't learn anything, I would hope that we've learned that good health is truly the very first wealth. It's the very first wealth. What do all of these other things matter if you don't have your health, right? So that's why I'm here, so that you can ask me almost anything on these live calls, and even after the fact, using the form. I want to extend the invitation to you to join the SIVA Circle. Join the circle. It's 2 weeks free. It is a community of women who are really all about designing the life we deserve, mitigating this stress, busting the burnout, and really looking at the 4 pillars of lifestyle medicine, applying it to our lives. We're looking at the wellness wheel and looking at designing a more holistic, whole person approach to our healthcare. We've got an awesome leadership and career coach in the SIVA Circle who really is all about creating balance and harmony in your career, between your work life and your home life, and also giving you the strategies to work smarter, not harder. We've got a career coach in this community because we spend so much time in our careers and in our work, right? So why not get some really good career coaching tips that help you work smarter, not harder, and reduce your risk of burnout? Reduce your risk of burnout in your career, right? To create more happiness and joy in the work that you do every day. If you're going to work every day, why not do work that you love? Why not have a career that excites you, that you can bring your talents to, your strengths, all that kind of thing? So that's another thing that makes the SIVA Circle so special. We have live events. We have a book club. We have a Let's Get Fit Together circle where we apply, lots of the principles of functional medicine. We have a community table where you can learn more about meal prepping, more about reversing these chronic health conditions. You can learn more about what I love: food, mood, and mental health, and gut health, and hormone balance. You get one-to-one access with me in a private membership-only community. There are no ads. There are no trolls. There are no, people, arguing with you and trying to prove a point, right? This is a private membership community where we are supportive of each other's growth and development and the move towards designing the life we deserve. We start with a vision statement that we craft ourselves, each of us as individuals. We work on vision boards. We learn the neuroscience of vision boards, why vision boards work. I'll tell you, these ladies have crushed it this year. They have really, really crushed it on their vision boards this year, because it's not just about putting pictures on a board. It's really about taking decisive action and having an action plan, having accountability, being surrounded by people who really do want to level up in their lives in big ways. 6 degrees of separation. You are the average of the 6 people you spend the most time with. And so because we are a community, we really do support each other's growth in every area of our lives. We're basically carving a new path to wellness. We are redefining what good health really looks like. So that's what this community is all about. I would invite you to join the SIVA Circle. Use the link in the description. You get 2 weeks, totally free, no obligation to come and see what we're all about. We welcome you in this space. Okay, we welcome you in this space. Stay tuned for my podcast coming out next week, which is all about fasting over 40. Everything you've ever wanted to know about intermittent fasting. Look out for my newsletter, Healthy House Calls with Angel. If you are not on my mailing list, get on my mailing list. You will get my free hormone guide, 9 daily habits for hormone balance. It is totally free when you sign up for my weekly newsletter. healthyhousecallswithangel.com. That is the link. There's another link, sivahealthgroup.com/start here. Okay. So if you're new to my world and you want to know what I'm all about and how did I come to doing this stuff, check me out at angelvshannon.com, angelvshannon.com. You can learn everything you ever want to know about me and links to everything that I'm doing at SIVA Health Group and at the SIVA Institute, where we are all about putting mindfulness and compassion in action to help you live longer and live better, to help you change your life, not just your symptoms. So I hope this session has been helpful for you. Ask me almost anything. Today is Thursday, December 29th. I hope you've had a wonderful year. I look forward to seeing you in January in 2023. I wish you a very, very, very safe, healthy, and happy New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Be well and be good to yourself, and never, ever, ever be afraid. Never be afraid to be amazing. Take good care. Bye-bye.